All right, y'all, as always, I'm going to try to do one of these videos to get straight to the point. You don't need to take 40 minutes to show somebody how to do this. This is a 02 Ford Focus. This should apply to anything from like a 2000 to a 07, but generally speaking, it's going to be the same on most of your single overhead cams. That's the important detail here. I couldn't find any videos on the single overhead cam. What happens is there's a seal on the inside of your timing belt down here. And then once we take the tire off, you'll be able to see better. But you see all that oil leaking down in there, and it's just throwing it everywhere. There's a seal behind that harmonic balancer also, and that's your crankshaft seal, and up to the top is your camshaft seal. A lot of people get really intimidated about doing these because you have to mess with the timing. And I'm going to show you if you have any basic mechanic knowledge, you could pull this one off. This one is not hard to do, so don't be intimidated. I'm going to lay it all out for you. First, take your passenger wheel off. You see how, I mean, it looks horrible. It's just throwing oil all around in there. All right. And once you take your wheel off, you're going to have this plastic shroud just up in here like this. You know, of course, you got to take that off. It's one 10mm bolt right up there at the top. This slides right up in here. Get that out of your way. And then come up here. You got a 10mm bolt right here. Then in the back it clips in, so when you take this bolt out, you pop up on it, and we're just going to set it over here to the side. All right, we got the car up on jack stands. I got my piece of block here, and I'm going to put my jack up under the oil pan to support the car, or to support the engine. But you got to use your board, otherwise you'll bust right through the oil pan. Do not do it without the board. All right, so I just put the jack right up to the engine. Didn't really lift it up yet. Now, we can come up here and hit these motor mount bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe those are the 18mm. All right, these are 18s. These are 15s. All right, you got your motor mount out of the way. Now you got these are 13mm. You also got one right up under here, right up under here. 4 of them will remove your top cover. All right, once you get your 4 13mm bolts out of this one, you got a plastic cover right below that you got a couple of little 8mm bolts on. You can take those off, snatch that off. Now your timing chain and everything is exposed. Pause for a commercial break. You see the 8mm screw down at the very bottom right-hand corner that holds that shroud on? If you can't get to that, you can pop that tensioner off. Go ahead and take your belt off and take your tensioner off, and you'll be able to get to it. I was able to get to it with a swivel. Now, it's real easy to get to my tensioner right here. You can take that belt off right to start with, but I've done this 5 or 6 times now. It's easier to wait. All right, now it's time to get the harmonic balancer. It is a 19mm again. This is where an impact wrench comes in really, really handy. It'll snap it right off without turning your engine over. But if you don't have one, you're going to have to use something like a hammer or some kind of sudden jolt to get that thing to break loose without turning your engine. Now that you got your harmonic balancer off, you will put your nut back in the hole. Why? Because we have to put the engine at top dead center. And what that means is lining up the timing marks. That oh so scary part that you've heard so much about. Now, you don't have to mark anything or anything. It's already got them. You see this? See this little tab right here? It says front. All right. There's no other tab anywhere around this. So you know that right there is your timing mark. And then I marked it just so you could see it in between the pin right there. This has to be lined up with this. And all you have to remember is it has to turn this way. You cannot go backwards. You have to turn this way. Line this up with this. At the same time, on the top one, again, you don't have to mark it. I marked it for you guys to see. On this side, you see that little tooth where I marked it with the pink? Where it just sticks out right there? That has to line up with that dot right there. So you have to line up the top with that little hole. At the same time, this little notch is lined up with that little hole. All right. You see what I mean? Lined up. Up top. Lined up. Now, once you have this lined up, you cannot let the crankshaft or camshaft turn, and you'll be fine. Just don't let those shafts turn. When you pop your bolt loose on the bottom, that will allow that sprocket to slide right off. Okay? Your tensioner right here is going to require you to use the Allen wrench. Put the Allen wrench in there, and as you turn it, the tensioner will slide right out of place, and you can work this belt off. You see, little Allen wrench hole down there? Release tension, and then you just work that belt off. Now, once you got the belt off, I used one of my fan clutch wrenches, but you're going to need it's either 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches. I'm not sure. Stick that thing in there to hold that. Then you could turn your nut without worrying about turning this shaft, because remember, you can't let these turn or else your timing will be off. So you hold this with one hand and you put your other wrench on right here and you break it loose. Once that comes off, this will slide right off. Same thing down here. When I take this bolt back off, this is going to slide right off the shaft. And it's only going to go back in one way because there's going to be a little key slide lock in there. All right. Set that out. Comes right off. This. See, look. This right here is why it'll only go back on one way. All right. Now, you can get this thing out with your fingers, but I had this engine running so it was hot. And I used me one of these little picks right here. But you see the groove in it. It'll slide right over top of that thing right there. And then this is your seal right here. This is our culprit, which I don't understand why it's leaking. But it is. All right, I'm not going to waste your time showing you how to put it back together. It is very self-explanatory. Scroll through the video and rewind if you really need that much help. The only part I'm going to show you is when you put your motor mount in, it obviously might not line up. But first, you knock all your tools off the car. But look, I mean, your motor will shift by just pushing on it. So you carefully take your big old pry bar, and you don't need much pressure. You just move it right up to where you need it at, stick your bolt in there, and you're done.